Get ready for a half hour of conversation and song. We welcome a local entertainer with a storied past who has lived on 3 continents and now calls Kansas home. Jim McCann is popular on the Wichita nightclub circuit, performing a broad range of classic rock and jazz as a one-man band. He has recorded 5 albums, produced dozens of radio jingles, and has been a driving force in helping promote the Kansas music scene. But that's only part of his story. You are about to hear the rest of the story. It's the life and times of Jim McCann on this week's edition of One on One. Welcome to One on One. I'm Victor Hogstrom. It's a real pleasure to have a guest such as Jim McCann, who not only has an interesting story to share, but he's also going to perform some of his music for us. Jim, thank you for being here one on one.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Victor.
Now, you've traveled the world and you've lived in several countries, grew up practically in a few of them, but you are a musician today, well known in Wichita. How did you get to develop that interest in the music business?
Well, it started in elementary school in Maryland, Chevy Chase, Maryland. We went to a lunch assembly one day, and there was a band there of my classmates. And Roscoe Henry played the drums on Wipeout from the Surfaris, and I was hooked. I wanted to be a drummer immediately. And so I set my sights on the drums and started building a drum set. And then we moved to Liberia.
That's West Africa.
Yeah, to West Africa. So I took my budding drum set with me and went off to Africa to see if I could get in a group with some other classmates, which I ended up doing. We put together a group called the Misty Souls. Back then it was the 60s, and in Liberia we were, soul music was very popular, along with the African high life music. So we listened to a lot of Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding, and actually we had our own Liberian James Brown. We had the ghost of Otis Redding, my friend Lowell Grigsby, another Liberian guy. And so we played all of that Motown music.
Did you play African music?
Yes, we sure did. I loved to play high life music, and I had some friends that were really good at that.
Well, you know, high life is from Ghana.
Yeah, and we also listened to a lot of Sir Victor Uwaifo from Nigeria.
Okay.
At the time, songs like Guitar Boy and Mami Wata, which was one of the first ones I ever learned on the guitar.
Well, you had an interesting story, life I should say, living in Liberia, and then you later on moved to South Korea. You went to school in Liberia.
Yes.
And later on, South Korea.
That's right.
Growing up in those 2 countries specifically, how did that affect your life, if any?
Oh, just tremendously. Liberia was such a great place to be for a kid. I was 11 when we moved there, and a kid with a pellet gun, who loved to be able to, travel around freely. Liberia was really safe at the time. We could hitchhike anywhere we wanted to go. So I spent a lot of time hunting with my friends, spearfishing, and that's how I made my money. My spending money. I'd sell the fish and the birds and the lizards and bats to people. The fish to mostly the people in the village. The eels and octopi and the ocean fish to French people on the beach. And then our science teacher would give us a quarter apiece for frozen fruit bats, which we would hunt at night. We'd shine a flashlight up in the almond trees, and you'd see the bat's eyes glowing red. And you just aimed between them, because you can't hit a bat on the fly. They don't fly in a straight line. So we'd hit them that way, and we'd collect them, put them in a baggie, throw them in the freezer, and take them to school the next day, where Mr. Ludwig would use them to dissect for
Science experiments.
class.
Once, when you were having lunch, you ran into a famous person.
Oh, yeah, President Nixon.
And where was this?
It was in the embassy rec hall in Monrovia, Liberia. I also made 50 cents an hour as the rec hall monitor, and I would check out the ping pong balls and the pool balls to the kids. And I would set up anytime there was a presentation or a movie in the rec hall. So one day I got to the rec hall, and Mrs. Beals, the cook, told me that we were going to have, at that time, Vice President Nixon to come in and give a speech, and she needed me to set up a dozen rows of chairs. So we did that, and he gave a very funny speech. I don't think I ever saw him be funny after that, but he gave an excellent speech, and everyone left, and he was going to be leaving in an hour or so when the driver picked him up to take him to the airport. So he said, can you get something to eat here? And I said, yeah, I get a cheeseburger and fries and 50 cents an hour for doing this. And he says, well, let me buy you a cheeseburger. And so Mrs. Beals made us a couple of cheeseburgers, and Mr. Nixon and I just sat down, and he asked me the same kind of questions. You know, what do you do here? What do you like? And
what about South Korea? And then you moved to South Korea.
Right. We came back from Liberia in the summer, and it was the summer before my 9th grade year, and so I went to the first semester of 9th grade in Brockton, Massachusetts, where my grandmother's from, and then we moved to Korea over the Christmas vacation, and stopped off in Japan to see my cousins who lived there at the time. There were 9 of them kids and 7 of us, so a big family. And then we got to Korea, and on the first day of school, I met my wife. Not at the time,
right,
my wife, but and we didn't date until our senior year. But I met her the very first day I got there, and my dad was an investment banker there and was training a Korean man to take over the bank, just like he had done in Liberia. And my wife's dad was a Lutheran minister who ran a center for American GIs.
So, Jim, when you left Liberia for Korea, what happened to the music?
Well, I took my drums to Korea and started with the band there and had a nice time playing music.
And what kind of music?
Rock.
Okay.
Rock music by then, yeah. We were playing Alice Cooper and Jimi Hendrix and Johnny Winter and that kind of stuff, Santana. And I was rehearsing for a gig with my group at school, like a homecoming dance. And I had left my drums set up in the auditorium. And as I was headed down to practice after school, the auditorium doors flew open in flame, and a girl came running out with her hair on fire, and the next thing I knew, the auditorium burned down with my drums on stage.
Oh.
So there was no way to replace them at the time. I was in September. So at Christmas time, my parents got me a Korean classical guitar, and I would take that out to the Yonsei University, to their amphitheater, and there would be Korean soldiers and college students singing American folk songs. Uh-huh. And they'd teach me one, and I'd go home and practice it for a couple of days, come back to the amphitheater and play it for whatever group was there, and then they'd teach me another one. So when I went back to the States that summer, I took the insurance money from the drums and bought a guitar.
But the music you played, I mean, while playing, I should say, you were like a hippie in Korea.
Well, we had long hair, yeah.
A
And
real hippie or just long hair?
just long hair. Yeah, I was president of the student council, captain of the tennis team. I wasn't, you know. We didn't, that was funny that you mentioned that, because we would watch the news reports from the United States all the time. And everybody we saw had long hair. So we thought everybody here had long hair. And we didn't think there was anything reprehensible about being long-haired or anything. So we put together a band, and we were quite a novelty because we all had long hair, which was against the law at that time for Koreans. And of course, we were round-eyed. You know, we had a Korean bass player, but everybody else was American. And so we were quite a novelty, and the two top guys in the Korean Musicians Union became our managers until the other guitar player's mother figured out they were getting all of our money for the gigs, and she took over as our manager.
So how has living abroad shaped your life today in the United States? And before you answer that, though, tell us, why did you come back to Kansas?
This is where my wife's from. When we moved back to the States, well, after graduating high school, I took a trip with her family. We started off, left Korea and went to Hong Kong, and then Taiwan, then Thailand, India. We were supposed to go to Nepal, but the plane had crashed that was supposed to take us to Nepal, so I never got to go there.
Well, lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me. And then we went to Iran, to Tehran, which at that time was a beautiful city. And then we went to Israel, Turkey, Greece, Italy, Spain, England, and home. And
now, were you visiting or living in these places?
Just visiting. It was
visiting.
about a 2-month-long trip back to the States. It was our graduation present, essentially. And my family at the time, they met up with us in Hong Kong, and then they moved to Singapore, and I came back to the States for school. And so my wife went to live with her brother, who was a Lutheran minister, vicar in Las Vegas. And I started school in Massachusetts at my dad's alma mater, Babson College. And I managed to talk her in a couple of years later into coming back to Massachusetts and marrying me. And so her folks came to the States. And actually, we told our parents that we were going to get married June 30th, and they met up in Hong Kong, my folks and her folks, and they said, no, you get married May 18th, because it's the only time all of us can be back in the States at once. So we got married, and we lived on Nantucket Island out there for a couple of years. And then my grandfather's company called me to come back to work on the mainland. And it was during the Arab oil crisis, and I made pretty good money then because I was selling insulation. And so I had some money, and we took a trip to Kansas to visit with their congregation. And while I was here, my father-in-law found a job for me with a bunch of people in his old congregation that had sent him to Korea. And my wife wanted to start a flower shop with her sister, so we packed up and moved to Kansas.
And that's been how many years?
36.
36 years.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to my original question, Jim. How has living abroad affected or shaped your life?
I'd say it's shaped it an awful lot. Number one...
good or bad?
Very good, very good. I'm just very happy to have that perspective. You know, it taught me how valuable it is to be an American. You know, spending all that time overseas, everybody wanted to come here. Mm-hmm. You know, and people would want to talk to you about it all the time, and they'd tell you that they wanted to come to America. And so it gave me a viewpoint about this country that it's really about as fine a place as you could ever be to live, and it's a good place to be from. I always felt like if I had some serious trouble, that the American embassy would be there to help me out and what have you.
You would think.
Yeah, you would hope. But and I'd say that nowadays, it gives me a very different perspective when I watch the news, because I've been to these places and dealt with those people. So I don't expect them all to act like Americans, where most of my friends, you know, I see them see what's going on in the Middle East and these other places, and they think these people think like Americans, and so they constantly don't understand why they do what they do. And I learned that most people in the world don't think like Americans.
But when you moved back to the United States and you now live in Wichita, you became a one-man band, playing all of the instruments, singing. How did you develop that talent?
Well, I started off just playing guitar and singing, and then a guy I was playing with convinced me that I could also play the harmonica while I was playing the guitar. And that took me a while. I had a tendency to just make the same moves on the harmonica as I was making on the guitar. I had to learn how to divorce those two things. So I did that, and so it was now guitar and harmonica. And then the first computer drummers came out. And so I bought myself one of those and learned how to program it. So now I had a drum beat behind me. And it just kept evolving, and I kept adding instruments.
And so what do you do with that talent now in Wichita? You're performing in various places. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I play mostly in clubs. I play at Mix the last Friday of every month. I host the Acoustics Anonymous Sunday Jam every other Sunday at the Driftwood. I was playing last week at Judy's, the week before at Magoo's, and then I these days also play for a lot of the retirement communities, and I love playing for the older folks. I played a sock hop at Park West a couple of months ago, and then Halloween they had me dress as a pirate and had a pirate theme at Georgetown Village, and I especially love playing for those folks because they really love it. And secondly, you're not competing with people hollering drink orders or playing pool or any of those things, so that you can they really enjoy it.
Well, so let's take a break and listen to some of your one-man show.
Great.
Lace up your boots and the truck on down to a knockout shack on the edge of town. There's a big scramble that just won't quit. Keep walking till you see a blue-eyed dead falling there. And you see some sights at the house of blue lights. There's fires, broilers, Detroit barbecue ribs. But the key to the tree is when they stuff up them fine 8 bits. You won't spend the rest of your rights at the house of blue lights. Time and we'll cut some rug while we dig those tunes like they should be done. It's a real homecoming for all the cats. Just boogie down the path, a welcome back, falling there. And you see some sights at the house of blue lights.
So, Jim, what do you like about performing?
I like making people happy. I like to make them smile, and I'm probably like being the center of attention.
You enjoy that?
Yeah, it's
Why is that?
oh, I just think I'm gregarious that way. People in my family have always been that way.
So in addition to playing music, you're also an advertising agent.
Yes.
Tell us about that work and how did you get into that?
Well, back in about 1988, I was in the wholesale wine and liquor business, and we were sponsoring a bikini contest at the top nightclub in Wichita with, I think, Bartles and James wine coolers. And we were partnered up with a radio station, and my radio rep came to me one day and she said, "Boy, I got a really good job waiting at the radio station for you if you'd be interested in having an account list." And I said, "Well, what would it pay?" And she told me, and I said, "I'm very interested." So I got into the radio business for several years, and in the course of that time, I wrote and produced a lot of jingles for clients. And then one thing led to another, and I managed a couple of radio stations, and I was working for Clear Channel in about 2000, and my top client asked me to come on board with them and make an in-house agency for them, and they were expanding their cell phone stores across the country. So I did that for about 3 years and then went off on my own. And so now I do a lot of radio, a lot of digital billboards and that kind of thing, and I've built, I think, 8 of those digital billboards around town.
Now, if you were to take a look back at your life, introspectively, living in all these countries and looking at the things you've done over your lifetime, and if you were to reach in to change just one thing, Jim, what would that be?
I can't think of a thing I would change, really. Most of it was so unusual and unexpected as it happened. You know, I'm writing a book about the Liberian experience now. I think I've got 36 chapters done. And I just had to write it down because people just wouldn't believe it. You know, they just wouldn't believe the things that we did there as kids, you know. And
it seems like you had the best time of your life in West Africa.
I sure did. It was a great place to be a kid.
But you would not change anything looking back at your life? Nothing you can, no regrets?
No, I can't think of any.
So what is your greatest joy?
My kids, my daughters, definitely, and my wife.
Right. What do you think is the purpose of life? Why are we here?
Wow, that's a biggie. I think, I certainly think what I was here for is what I did. You know, I was here to enjoy myself, get a good education, entertain people, have children.
So if you believe in heaven, as I do, and if you were to go to heaven, what would you hope that God would be saying to you when you enter those gates?
Well, I'd hope he wouldn't be too upset with me.
About what? Something you want to tell us, Jim?
I've certainly had my share of things that I'm not proud of, as I think we all have, but I don't try to do any of those anymore. I've kind of settled into life's too short to have controversy or to go looking for controversy. So I pretty much avoid those kinds of things these days and try to work with the people that I've been working for a long time that I really enjoy working with. And I've been very blessed that I have a lot of colleagues that are, they're very professional, they're friendly, they're the people I like to see every day. And since I don't work for a large corporation anymore, I don't have to go to all those meetings, and that's kind of nice. I work out of my house, and that's satisfying and rewarding, and it gets me a great insurance rate because I don't put that many miles on my car.
So, to summarize it all up, based on all of your life's experiences, your professional experiences, and based on what you just said, what would you conclude to be your philosophy of life?
Well, I'm a Christian, and I believe all of it. And I think that my role is probably about what it ought to be in that philosophy. I like to believe in the good in people and see the good in people, and I usually try to find something to say to them when I see them that lets them know I really like what you've done with your hair, or you're looking awful nice today, or it's good to see you feeling good,
Always trying to accentuate the positive.
Right. I just can't ever wrap my head around negativity much. It's just, I don't understand that as an alternative, why people would dwell on things they can't change, or they make them unhappy.
On that note, Jim McCann, thank you so much.
Thanks, Victor.
For joining us one-on-one.
Great to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for watching this week's edition of One-on-One. We leave you tonight with more of Jim's music, and I'll be back next week to go one-on-one with another interesting Kansas personality. Until then, I'm Victor Hogstrom. Good night.
Let's all go down and do it for good. We get a small boat of brown and a bottle of skate. Bring on out to my baby. Let's all go down and do a smoke up. Let's all go down and do a smoke up. We get a small bottle of wine and a bottle of skate. Bring it on out to my baby and me.